So I really enjoyed your book.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, like genuinely, I know like I'm supposed to say that, but like I genuinely, I love it. It's very convenient because it's only 106 pages, at least the version that I got. Is it 106 pages?
It's about the same length, I'm sure. It'll be printed differently, so it might be a little bit longer, more pages, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was perfectly dense, well articulated, and like real. It really felt like exactly what you need, and without any fluff. And
Wow.
I thought it was a really beautiful thing as well, because I don't know if you know anything about I do like Rolfing and various different like
Mhm.
somatic experiencing things. And so
Mhm.
you mentioned Peter
Okay.
Levine in there, and you're talking about his work. And then I was like, oh, I think Gabby would love Eugene Gendlin and Felt Sense. And literally like the next subheading was like Felt Sense. I'm like, Gabby. So I
Talking the same
appreciate it. I
language.
appreciate you
Yeah.
creating something like that and bringing it into the world. I think it's such an important message for people to start to begin a more intimate conversation with their physical body as an opportunity to offer another strategy to not get out of the mind, but just offer another road into the self.
Right. And to let the body lead in this instance, right? Let the body be part of the process.
Yeah, yeah. Where did those learnings happen for you? Has that been something that's been kind of like duh throughout your life, or did you have teachers, or where did this come from?
Well, I share this journey in the book of Happy Days of this trauma recovery journey from being dissociated from experiences from my childhood, and which led to addiction and led to a lot of psychosomatic conditions, as you've brought up. And I was for so many years just unaware of the why. And when I remembered my childhood trauma that I was dissociated from, when I was 36 when I remembered, I had this major aha moment of like, oh, that's why I have TMJ. That's why I was a drug addict. That's why I have gastrointestinal issues. That's why I'm a workaholic. Just totally like this major aha of, oh, okay, that explains it. And it was in my deep dive trauma recovery in the last, since 2016, that I write about so intimately in this book, that I was guided to many profoundly transformational therapeutic practices that I also believe are practices that are very rooted in spiritual conditioning and spiritual faith.
Hmm.
That was also when I started to address the body. So it was the work of Dr. John Sarno, Peter Levine. You mentioned Jenlin. Just really getting into the body-based work was a humongous part of my recovery,
Yeah, I
because
think
I think that it's necessary. It's mandatory.
yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that something like somatic experiencing or doing like the felt sense with, I say Genlin, you say Genlin. Is it Genlin? It probably is Genlin. I've always just
I don't
read it and I'm
know.
like, I think it's Genlin.
I don't
Anyways, it
know.
doesn't matter. But in those experiences, like at times myself, if I'm feeling maybe really anxious or, something, anxiety might be a thing. And it's like, it feels like there's like this erupting volcanic sensation in my abdomen, chest territory. And I want to like go out, call people, or exercise, or, masturbate or something to like, anything that's not being with myself.
Hmm.
And then the opportunity or the invitation would be to sit and experience that and actually go deeper into that sensation and maybe explore, does it have a color, does it have a texture, does it have a shape, does it have a sound, does it, and I think that the experience that I've personally had with that is it can create a little bit of a distance between the sensation of this is the entirety of me and this is this experience that I'm kind of, I think it can be very helpful to create a little bit of space so you can kind of start to analyze and observe as opposed to being overwhelmed. Is that your experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that being able to do the body-based work and touch into the body stuff, but how the body reacts to trauma is so empowering, because it gives you this resource for self-regulation
Mm.
and practices for not just trying to get out, but to move through.
Hmm.
And, a lot of times we're just wanting to get out of that pain, get out of that feeling, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. But when we're letting ourselves be in the presence of the physical sensations and be curious about what's coming up in the body, then we can really begin to move the experience of moving through rather than pushing past or getting out.
Yeah. And that's something you bring up in the book Happy Days is just how much bravery it takes to allow yourself to allow those deeper sensations to surface. And then also within that, I think we can kind of put ourselves into like a double bind of the belief that I need to be brave, but I also need to be resourced in order to feel safe enough to actually have the spaciousness or the container to organically be able to express that stuff. And that's, I've heard you share that was kind of something that, can you kind of share your journey of unwinding? You had like a specific inciting acute trauma that seemed to continue to like perpetuate in your life. Can you kind of share that experience of getting to a point of being able to I don't know, integrate that, if that's the right language?
Well, you said it. It's becoming safe enough to face the wounds. So when I said to my therapist, I said, why now? Why at 36 am I remembering this? Right. She was able to say to me, because you're safe enough now, because of all the work that you've done, you're safe enough to face these experiences. So I think that I believe that our recovery, whatever it may be, recovery from trauma, recovery from not getting the childhood upbringing that we deserved or that we needed, whatever it might be, it comes in the right space and time. Especially if you're committed to your journey, you're going to be led, and it's a spiritual process, truly. And there's no accidents along the way. And so I felt that I was led to all kinds of different therapeutic processes and practices, but right when I was needing them. So I always say you read it when you need it. And
Or maybe you
that was
read
the,
it and you're able to see it when you might read a thing and it's right there in front of you, but you don't have um,
yeah,
the
and I
tools to
kind
be
of
able to
feel
pick
like
it up.
I feel like you're often not even guided to go deeper with something unless you're ready for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, somebody might be guided to this podcast and think, oh, wow, like I need this book now. And if they're listening to us and they're not ready for it, then they won't pick up this book. Maybe they'll pick up a different book of mine, but then come back to this one when they're ready.
Yeah. Something that I think can be common in the world of like, I don't know, like spirituality and such is, or people like doing the work. I had Byron Katie on here a couple times, and I just so greatly value and appreciate her because she's like the queen of the work, but she's also so darn playful, and she's
Mm.
just so light. And we like did acro yoga together, and she's like 80
Hmm.
some years old and getting flipped around upside down, and
Hmm.
like she's totally down to celebrate.
Yeah.
And I think it can be kind of like nauseating sometimes being around people that and this is probably my own judgment or projection, but when it's like so much about the work, and I think
Yes.
that there can be this endless well of the work, and then, we die and we missed out on like the joy of life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have you ever had
And
any, or noticed that, or had that experience with yourself, or is that something that resonates in any way?
yeah, I think there was times in my life when I was in seasons of deep work, and then seasons of of in work. When we reference work, we're talking about therapeutic work.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think my most of my life I've been in this pursuit of feeling good and feeling better. But the nice thing is that as a result of having that commitment to that work, I can now be in play.
Hmm.
But I want to really acknowledge what you said, which is that even in the midst of all that work, you can have fun. You can have fun along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can be in joy along the way. You can celebrate along the way.
What are your triggers? More words. I always tend to use quotations around words that seem to get thrown around a lot. But what are triggers or things that, do you notice reiterations of similar sensations of the past of like, oh, like this thing still gets me, or do you feel like you've completely resolved, cleared some of maybe like the neuroses of the past. Does that make sense? I can
Oh
re-explain.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, in the book as you know, I write so much about what triggers us and what our reactions and responses are. And in the book, I talk about internal family systems therapy, IFS. And the more IFS I practice, and I'm now studying training IFS and doing the training in IFS, the more I identify what IFS would refer to as our parts, the different parts of us.
Hmm.
And so now it's not so much about seeing the triggers, but witnessing these parts of me that might be in a protector zone, right? So I have a different relationship to those triggers now. And I can see, oh, okay, when things are out of control, my controlling protector part comes up and she talks like this and she does this and so I've allowed those parts to not disappear but just be less extreme,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the miracle, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a class at one point, and one of the teachers mentioned never wasting a trigger. And I thought that was just so cool.
Nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So it's like, because so much of maybe the entirety of everything is the stories that we tell ourselves, and so if we can start to reframe things to being like, oh, like I'm actually, I'm not only am I not avoidant of things that make me uncomfortable, but I'm actually seeking it out. Like if there's a monster under the bed, my operating system is, oh, like please show me the monster. And then it,
Hmm.
and I think that that's something that, I mean, that happens in maybe. Have you used psychedelics? Is that something you've had experience with?
I've been sober for 16 years, so I am, and I know a lot of sober people that do use psychedelics, but for me, I have found that that's not a path for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe it's not even so much about my sobriety as it is just that um, that was never even my drug of choice. So it was so truly just freaked me out. Um,
Sure.
so the answer is no, but I know that it has been greatly supportive for folks for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. What do you? How do you think your experience was cocaine your drug of choice? Cocaine and alcohol.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Hmm.
How do you feel? I'd imagine my guess is you probably have some form of like gratitude for those experiences, or maybe complete gratitude for those experiences. Uh,
100%. Yeah, totally. Talking back about the parts, like in IFS, we have it's a system that believes that we have all these different parts of ourselves, and there's parts of us that are exiled, like the little children that are, so insecure and we don't want to touch those guys. We want to just lock them up.
yeah.
And then we've got these protector parts. And sometimes, in fact, the addict, my part that was the addict, the cocaine addict, was a protector part. And while she was extreme and while she had a lot of drama in her life and was very detrimental to my physical body and to the safety of others at times, she did have a role and she did the best she could at that time to keep me, to manage my system, to keep me safe, to help me feel, to help me get through. And so while she's not in that extreme role anymore, I have a lot of gratitude for her.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have contact with her, like communication with her, or is that even a reasonable way to explain
Oh
it?
yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely stay in communication with your parts from past experiences, but I don't. That addictive part is very distant for me. Like I don't see her show up much anymore because I've helped her get out of that extreme role. So she went from drug addiction to, she went from love addiction to drug addiction to work addiction, but it's been it's been enough recovery behind me to really not identify with the addict part anymore. She's still there, and I think that being in 12 step and having a sponsor and staying close to my sponsee helps me remember, because you never want to forget where you were,
Yeah.
but I don't have to identify with that part of me anymore as something that has power over me. Or and that might sound scary to somebody who's a recovering addict that's listening, because a lot of the 12 step work is like, never forget, right? Like don't don't wish to shut the door on it, right? And I think that's where my ability to witness that part and just say, okay, you had a really important role, but now you're no longer in your extreme role,
Hmm.
is valuable.
Do you feel like you have a in relation to like the parts, like something I've experienced is especially during like breath work things. That's the time that I'll notice these pretty like visceral sensations of what seems to be, I don't know, it's like communication with like little boy Aaron.
Mm.
And I usually cry. Like it's just like this
Mm-hmm.
sensation of, I don't know, like combination like gratitude, appreciation. Um, it just feel like little Aaron like tried so hard, and he like
Mm.
it's like this like deep compassion for that boy.
Mm.
And I think sometimes with maybe myself and maybe other people, maybe yourself, I think there's like we can stop growing at a certain point. There could be some type of maybe again like trauma or something that caused that part of ourselves to contract and kind of pull out of like the life game. And then we pack around that and we keep on building, and maybe we get strong and maybe we get money and we get cars and girlfriends or boyfriends. But that point kind of had a freeze.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's any freezes in your path, or do you feel like you're pretty well completely free?
So I lived with a lot of frozen parts for many years. Even dissociated memories is like one of the most obvious frozen parts, right? Like literally frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, I write about some of my experiences of almost like soul retrievals, as if these parts were returned to me in my therapy or in my meditation or in my personal growth. And the more that we become safe in our physical body and in our nervous system, and the safer we become with the experiences of our past, the more we can reclaim those fragmented parts of ourselves. And so my experience has been that I have a very deep relationship now with little Gabby, who I reference in the book. And I'm there for her all the time. And I'm always noticing her and knowing what she needs and asking her what she needs in the moment, and establishing and developing that relationship with her and letting her know that she has a higher self that she can turn to has helped her come back online. And that playfulness and that silliness and that joy that she deserved to have, but that was cut off, can be celebrated and enjoyed today because she's safe to be with me.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. Um, I guess within that, like as far as something that people can, I mean, I think that whole thing is really therapeutic just to hear. But for someone that's maybe this is like novel or like okay, like little Mike in New Jersey listening, it's like I never really thought about this little Mike stuff. How does a person start to begin a journey of starting to defragment?
Read the book. So the book, it's so funny when you do these interviews about your book, because like the questions are always answered inside the pages.
Sure.
And the whole book, even from the very start, begins to help the reader very gently look more closely at the patterns in their life and the ways that those patterns may be protecting unresolved experiences from particularly childhood. And so if someone's like, well, I've never even contemplated that anything was wrong in my past, this book will be a really gentle guide to help you look a little bit more closely at the ways that your past has been programming your present, and offer you a lot of in real time guidance and suggested guidance for how to undo some of those unresolved disturbances from the past that might keep you stuck in patterns that you don't want to be in as an adult.
Yeah.
And so you may not know yet that you have a relationship with a little part of yourself, or you may not know yet that there's lots of different parts of you. And you may not think that you have trauma, and you may not think that there's anything wrong, but you just have a sense that things could be better, or you're struggling with anxiety, or you're depressed at times, or you have lack motivation, or you have a lot of gastrointestinal issues or headaches or insomnia, and your body or your life experience is screaming help, but you don't know that there's anything to help, and you don't know how to get there. but you're willing to feel better, then this is your book.
Hmm. Did you see The Matrix, the most recent one?
No.
Oh man, are you a fan of The Matrix? You gotta be.
You know, maybe I should be. Maybe I should be, Aaron.
Well,
Okay.
no, should.
No, there's some things in life that you can suggest as a should. Like you
Yeah,
should watch that show.
I think
That's an
I
okay
think
thing.
you'd like it. Yeah.
Oh my God, my kitten is so funny right now. She's freaking out. Go
Yeah.
on.
No, I love that you got the self-soothing kitten. That's an interesting. So I'll talk about the Matrix, but also I think it's humans, the footnote Matrix. But I think humans are so beautiful when you do start to observe the self-soothing patterns that we do
Mm,
throughout the day, like having a
mhm.
conversation with somebody and something as simple as like them just crossing their arms.
Mhm. It's funny, my son and I have a very similar self-soothing thing that my husband pointed out. When we lie down to go to sleep, we both, my son and I, we rub our feet together. Like I rub my, not with his, but I rub my feet
Right.
together.
Yeah.
And then I noticed like my 3-year-old does the same thing. It's so funny.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of kids wearing adult costumes. I didn't make that up, but I've heard that and it's stuck around.
Absolutely.
It,
Mhm.
it's such an interesting thing. We have these veneers, that, and it becomes easier to pack on a veneer as you get, especially if you have money, because then it's just opens up the world of different type of insulation that you can kind of pack yourself with. But behind all that, I think it's just such a beautiful thing to see people's little, like the little self-soothing things are the things that really, really get me, or people's
Mm.
like little discomforts or little, like those little bits. I just think it's such a beautiful thing because you really see that, like, that deeper child self. But the Matrix, what I like about it, and I think you would enjoy as well, is a lot of the, like Neo in it. A lot of people, Neo particularly, he would have like these sleepless nights, and he'd have this like deep, insatiable urge to. I'm probably misrepresenting it, but generally speaking, this deep, insatiable urge for like there's like something more. There's like something he's itching at and
Mhm.
something he's scratching at, but he doesn't know
Mhm.
exactly what it is, and he keeps living this ordinary life. But there's this like there's like this like this turning thing inside of him, and I think that's all of us,
Mhm.
but it's like it can be fucking terrifying to open yourself up to that, whatever the heck that little like turning nucleus thing is inside of us. And I think that, life is maybe like a process of, I don't know, taking down the layers to allow that, like that truth to come out. Does that just sound like some,
100%.
what do you think about that?
Oh, I agree with you. I think that life is a it's I always say that the world is our classroom, people are our assignments. We're always in this I believe we're here on a journey of undoing fear and remembering love. So, we're consistently peeling back the layers of who we thought we should be, the layers of protection, the layers of trauma, fear, the blocks to the presence of who we really are, which is that innocence, that childlike part, the joyful, innocent person that you were when you were born.
Yeah. What are you excited about these days? What like lights you up? What turns on that childlike spontaneity? That
Oh,
just
cool
like, wow,
question. I'm excited to go on vacation for the first time in 2 years. I haven't been on a plane in 2 years.
nice.
So in a week or so, I'm going to a vacation with my husband and then 2 other couples, and they're my 2 best girlfriends, 2 of my best girlfriends and their husbands. And no Omicron is holding me back.
Yeah.
I'm like fully in like I'm golden protection of light to get on that plane, and I want to sit at the beach with some, fake mojito or something,
Nice.
and just like and just do my mocktails and just be in the shade and just enjoy doing nothing in warm weather and being with my girls and my husband and just relaxing and checking out for a moment.
Yeah.
That's my joy. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being live on stage again. My one of the most heartbreaking things for me personally, and I want to acknowledge that this is a luxury problem, but is that when COVID happened, my stage was taken away. So I've done like 10x more talks in the last 2 years, but they've all been on Zoom.
Yep.
and it's heartbreaking. So I really, really miss the live experience. And for me, when I'm on stage is when I'm the most connected to God. It's when I'm the most aligned. It's when God is using me most.
Hmm.
And so, and that can sound heady to somebody, but it's the truth. It's my medicine. It's my art. Speaking publicly is my art. And so imagine your art being taken from you. So I'm, going to do some live online events. I have some events coming up in March that, it's a little bit weird and squeaky because I haven't been on stage in so long. So I don't even really know what it will feel like, but I trust my process. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that thing. I feel like doing something that makes, like for me, any type of public. You've done significantly more public speaking stuff than I have, but anytime I'm doing something like that, I'm like totally terrified. And then there's a similar sensation of that. Like it feels like when it works, it feels like like small I gets out of the way,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So
there's something really, I don't know, therapeutic, healing, spiritual, something about that. And it's in it, like to be able to encapsulate that for the masses. I think everyone having that thing, I think, is incredibly therapeutic.
I have an extraordinarily selfish career path. I write my books. I've written 9 books in 11 years, and I wrote them all for myself. And I'm had this secondary goal and desire, which is to have them serve my reader. But first, they had to serve me because I needed to write from my own transformation in order for the book to transform someone else.
Sure.
So that's been, incredibly healing and joyful and therapeutic. And the same goes for being a motivational speaker, because to your point, when you get out of the way and you let spirit speak through you and you become a channel for inspiration to be coming through you in the service of others, there's no greater feeling in the world. And so when I write my books, I'm channeling, and when I'm speaking, I'm channeling, and I'm channeling, and I'm reaping the benefits, right? So I am borrowing the benefits of the transmission. So I'm feeling that shift within myself while at the same time extending that energy to others. And what others are being healed by is not my energy or my words. It's the remembrance and the recollection of their own truth, their own connection to source or spirit or God or whatever they call it.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
it's
when
like,
you're in the presence of someone, like if you're in the presence of a transformational, beautiful musician that's channeling the music and you're brought to tears, it's not them, it's their connection to God that's reminding you of yours.
yeah, that's like love, right? Like
Hmm.
being in love with someone, you are they're catalyzing that remembrance inside of you, and you can become
Hmm.
confused in the belief that like they are the love, and I can't find the sensation without this person, but in fact they're just kind of the right recipe for you to open that sensation up in your inside of yourself. Have
Yeah.
I think I don't know.
I,
I don't know.
I
What do you
well,
think
I
about
have
that?
a lot of opinions about that. So I think that f- absolutely falling in love is a cracking open, and it gives you this heart opening feeling, and it in many ways is helping you, feeling that attachment can help you feel safe,
Hmm.
and in that sense of safety you can feel a connection to what you might call a higher power, but you have to be cautious not to make that partner the higher power.
Yeah, yeah. Love's terrifying for me.
Okay, 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 okay.
How's it been for you? Has that been an easy access point?
Well, I write about attachment styles in the book.
Yeah,
And for many years, I lived with what's called insecure attachment, which is
sure.
you grew up with, sometimes your parent was there and sometimes they weren't there, and there's sort of like this lack of steadiness and this insecurity. And actually, it's really boiled down to anxious attachment style, which is the one that I believe that I've identified with. And so that anxiously attached person for many years was very codependent, didn't feel safe without a partner, was constantly seeking, and as you read the book, you're going to understand your attachment style better and how it represents itself in relationships. But as I've healed myself and become more and more steady in my own nervous system, the anxious attachment style needs have been resolved, but not just because of my recovery. And this is a radical shift that I've had very recently, Erin, that you'll be thrilled to hear. For years, I would teach people, and I'd even say to myself, like, you can't let another person be your source of safety. And I believe that from a spiritual perspective, we have to have that sense of safety within ourselves, and we have to have that sense of safety, in a higher power. But recently, in my deepening of my studying of the attachment theory, it actually is really important for us to have attachment in life.
Hmm.
Because when we have that kind of attachment, particularly to a romantic partner, we feel more free in the world. And so, because I have a secure attachment with my husband, even though we have our own styles that play out, but because we have such a secure attachment for since 2007, we've been together a long time, we both have this ability to freely create in the world, to be childlike, to have fun, to feel, to write 9 books in 11 years. I really thank him for that in so many ways because of the stability and the security that even if we're having a balls out fight, neither of us are leaving.
Hmm.
And so I've come to learn that attachment in the human condition is a very important thing. And it can come in a lot of forms. It can come with friendship. It can come with family members. It can come with lovers. It can come with pets. But it's important.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. And then you have to, I think a lot of those ideas of sovereignty and autonomy and, finding love within yourself and just locking yourself inside of a room and just like finding the joy, um, there's value there. And it can also lead to a very like disconnected, closed off, lonely existence. If that's your
Mm,
operating system, like that's what you need to find, and not being available, because you have, I think a person has to come back and define what is self, like
right.
what am I.
Well, what you just described would be considered more of an avoidant attachment style.
Hmm.
Like the kid that grew up with parents that did not have their needs met, and they grew up with the belief system that nobody else can help me. And so as an adult, they're like totally just run for the hills when somebody gets clingy or needy,
Hmm.
that they like the beginning stages of the relationship, but not to get too close. They really value their independence above all else. And, just will avoid intimacy and vulnerability. And in fact, like turned off by it and very self reliant.
Hmm. Do you see your own patterns of intimacy reflect that of your parents' relationship?
Well, I think all of us will in some way. I think that our parents taught us the patterns of behavior that often dictate how we will react in life. So maybe we resemble them, or maybe we go to the opposite direction, or maybe we just act in a certain way because we didn't get our needs met. So I think it's all of the above. And, I thank my parents in the acknowledgments of this book because you could read the book and be like, wanting to blame my parents for some of the things I've lived through. And because you're like, oh, well, she talks a lot about feeling unloved and, just feeling neglected and, but I thank my parents at the top of the acknowledgments because it, I wouldn't be who I am today if it weren't for everything I experienced. And my parents, just like me, have had their own traumatic wounds that they had unresolved. And so we when we start to do our own recovery, the first point of attack is going to be our parents, like, how did you let this happen to me? Or how could, whatever. And the truth is that we have to come at it from a place of recognizing, and that will come up. I mean, you got to go through that. You can't override that, right? You have to go through the anger and the rage and all of the things that come up.
Yeah.
But you also want to hopefully come through the other side and just say, okay, well, if this was my experience with them, I can't even imagine what theirs might have been, right? And I now am lucky enough to have the resources to do the work to come out the other side. But maybe they couldn't or haven't.
Yeah.
And that's just a different way to look at our family members.
Yeah, I like the idea that your parents I mean, I don't think this is an idea. I think this is just like an absolute truth, I think. So maybe it's not absolute, I think. Um, but they're expressing and performing and, parenting the only possible way that they can.
The only way they can. Yeah. And you can hold people accountable for growth and for trying to be better, but not if they don't want it, or not if they're not ready for it, not if they're not capable of acknowledging, because sometimes people aren't even capable of acknowledging that there's anything to change.
Yeah. And so then within that, do you, I wonder your sensation or feeling or belief around how much free will we have. Have you ever thought about that?
All the time. Yeah. I mean, I think that we all have two choices in this lifetime. We have the choice to numb out, or we have the choice to wake up and to get closer to consciousness. And anyone listening to this podcast and following you or following me is obviously in some way set even a molecule of intention to wake up. And doesn't mean that they're not still numbing out in ways, or that we're not still numbing out in ways, but we're in the pursuit of waking up. And what does waking up look like? I mean, waking up is like, is connecting to a higher power of your own understanding and establishing a baseline of joy, and cleaning up whatever wreckage from your past may be in the way of the presence of that joy within you.
Yeah. What about shame? Do you have any kind of shame that's still lingering?
Well, in the book, I have an entire chapter about shame. And I talk about how I didn't even know I had shame and I had been like a spiritual teacher for nearly a decade before I even recognized my shame.
Sure.
And that's the truth, And I didn't even know I had shame until I was leading a workshop with two other facilitators. And I was in the class while another teacher was teaching, and I was in the audience. And I had to do this exercise on shame. And I was faced with my shame for the first time at probably what was like 38 years old or something, and like, because shame is the most impermissible feeling
Yeah.
and emotion.
Yeah.
And and in the book, I talk about the different ways that shame can show up for us. So it can show up in ways that can be really detrimental in relationships and really detrimental to our nervous system. And so it's a big topic I tackle in this book, and it's an important topic because, look, I wouldn't challenge someone to face their shame until they've done some deeper work, because shame can sometimes be one of the final frontiers in the journey to really face the shame, because the shame is often the backbone of why we act the way we do.
Yeah. Do you think that obviously you don't know what you don't know, but do you have any sense of, is there anything you're working on right now that you're like, oh, this is a thing, this is a recurrent situation?
There's some things I'm working on in my therapy that are I would like to use the word melting.
Mm. Mentionable? Not so much.
There's a few things in my life that are unsaid.
Yeah. Good.
Not much, Aaron. You might be the first to ask me a question I didn't answer. That was pretty major.
Yeah. Yeah.
Major.
I get that.
But listen, when you experience trauma as a child, particularly sexual trauma, there's a lot of shame that you carry for a long time. And so working through that can be, so I guess I just did answer the question. Yeah.
Do you feel any, I did a long podcast with my mom, maybe like a year and a half ago or so. It was the first and only podcast I've ever like very openly, like, what's that called? Ugly cry, like ugly cried. And that's something that she had experienced at a younger age, or some level of abuse had transpired, and we talk about in there. And one of the things that I maybe project on to her is kind of like this like sensation of feeling like, stop being the victim, like stop being the victim,
Mm.
and it's something that it might just be my own projection, because my own insecurity of victimizing myself.
Your own shame. Your own shame.
Mm.
Yeah. Because sometimes when particularly a parental figure, right? And they've experienced something that's in the world considered shameful. we take on that shame.
Hmm.
And so what do we do with shame? We fight it, we project it, we avoid it, we judge it, you know?
What's the process?
Read the book.
Yeah.
Well, facing into shame is a very gentle process, and it's not something that I would recommend doing without therapeutic support. Typically,
Hmm.
um, I would recommend internal family systems therapy for facing into shame, because shame is it's a part of us that needs to be faced into very gently and maturely and support with a lot of support,
Yeah.
because it's so impermissible and unbearable that it can take us out. We can dissociate. I would notice when I would touch into shame in my therapy, I would fall asleep. And I'm not even kidding, like
Sure.
narcolepsy, like fall asleep.
Sure. I've had clients like that doing body work. Do you feel
Oh,
like
yeah, I bet you see that.
do you feel victimless in your present story of identity structure? Sorry, it's a lot of words for, but do you feel like is there any victim in there
In my story of my past,
of yourself? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, like you,
no, I don't feel like a victim. No, super grateful. Grateful for all of it.
yeah.
I don't feel like a victim in any way, shape, or form.
What do you something I've heard you talk about previously in other conversations, such was um, it seemed listening to you, the only ones I listened to were from the past, obviously, but like more than a year. But it seemed like there was a seeking of freedom, but not a present state of freedom.
Yeah, good acknowledgement. That is probably what's most new. That's why the subtitle of Happy Days is The Guided Path from Trauma to Profound Freedom and Inner Peace. There's no fucking way I would write that book if I didn't live it. I would never put that subtitle onto a cover of a book with my face on it unless I could stand behind it.
Are there shortcuts?
No, but there's fun along the way. There's
Yeah.
relief along the way. There's joy along the way. There's laughter along the way. It's you don't, like you said earlier, you don't have to do the work and be miserable. You can be in the therapeutic work and also have a beautiful life.
Yeah. Yeah. The story that's something that, and do you got to go at one? I think we scheduled for an hour. Um, but that's something that another thing that I see, again, could be my own projection, but with people in general, but the idea of wanting to be a thing outside of their present state, and or want to, I want to be more freaking spiritual monk like, or I want to be more wealthy, this, whatever the thing is. I have myself, and then I have this projection of what I'd like to be. And I have a feeling that as long as we're running that operating system, there will always be distance. And so we can keep on, pushing forward, but it's still the carrot sitting there because there's still this disbelief that I am that.
Yeah.
And so I wonder sometimes that with like the seeking of freedom, we're like, I'm a seeker, it's like, well,
Well, seeking freedom to me just meant coming back to me,
yeah,
not becoming anything new.
yeah,
So, what does it feel to be free? It feels to be free of the pretenses, the false pretenses that I placed upon what happiness looked like, and returning to just being fucking happy with where I'm at and who I am, and proud of everything I've been through, and proud to live to tell. And even in the midst of still resolving shame, I can still be proud. And it's and I'm really living it. And as you said, just listening to a podcast from a year ago, you'd hear me, or 2 years ago, you would have heard me still seeking that. But I'm proud to say it's here.
well, thanks for making time to do this. I appreciate it. I really want to do it in person because that's my preference. It's like, I think there's so much value in connecting with someone in IRL. I think there's something very therapeutic about it, so perhaps
Yeah, I agree.
at some point down the line we can do something. Or do you come through the Austin, Texas location? That's probably not.
Typically, but I haven't been on a plane in 2
Oh,
years.
right. This is your first plane experience. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Maybe at some point we can do something in person again because I'd love to continued
Definitely.
conversation.
That would be
Um,
excellent.
and so people should run out and grab Happy Days. Where's the best place to get the book?
Get it on Amazon, but I always recommend please go to your local bookstores. They're suffering, they're struggling, they need support. Go to your local bookstore, go grab a copy of Happy Days. You can also go to deargabby.com/happy days, giving away an awesome, I'm always giving away gifts and resources when people order the books. So go get them there. And just get one for yourself and get one for a friend because we need it now.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm on presently we're launching a book as well, and so I'll probably talk about it in the outro here, saying go grab the Align Method book. But I would say that Happy Days I think would be a really excellent, I don't know, addendum or pairing, or it's very congruent and it goes deeper into some of the conversations that I would have liked to have gone to into Align Method had I had more space.
Yeah,
So I think those
beautiful,
they'd
Aaron.
be a good pair. So Happy Days.
I can't wait to
I
read your
dig it.
book.
Yeah, I'll send one out for you. We'll get the I think we anyways we can talk about it afterwards. But thank you so much for this conversation, making time to do it,
Thank you,
and
sweetheart.
well, yeah, thank you all for tuning in. That's it. That's all. Over now.